G'day everybody, Matt Ellis with you for the latest edition of the Cricket Library podcast, and today an absolute thrill to be chatting to our first West Indian guest, former captain Jimmy Adams.
And Adams goes for it. He gets a puck pointing at point, and it may go to the fence again. It does. Still 2 slips for Lee. Slow ball, and well picked up and well played by Adams. It became a full toss. He didn't try and hit it too hard. He made sure he got it into the gap, but he timed it well enough to go to the fence. 4 follows a 4.
Jimmy shares about the origins of his passion for cricket, scoring a test match double 100, batting for 5.5 hours to win a game against Pakistan, the key ingredients to him scoring runs on the subcontinent, the memorable 1999 series between the West Indies and Australia, captaincy, and much, much more, including the 3 people he'd most like to invite to the nets. It's time to sit back, relax, and enjoy the Jimmy Adams story on the Cricket Library podcast. Very warm welcome to the Cricket Library podcast. Jimmy Adams, thanks so much for joining us.
No worries, my pleasure, mate.
It's great. You're our very first West Indian guest on the program, and really love finding out the origins of people's passions for cricket. And we've had people from different countries, different cultures, and really like to know what it was like for you growing up in the West Indies.
So I grew up in rural Jamaica, and in a nutshell, all the boys growing up, we sort of did cricket and football, basically.
Yeah.
6 months of cricket, 6 months of football. And I came from a family, or my dad's side of the family, that had a passion for cricket. So you grew up listening to cricket stories, and, you watched your dad sort of really get into the game. He would listen to test matches on the radio, as we did in those days. And so yeah, between sort of like the community that I lived in, where all the kids my age just played sports, but specifically cricket and football, so I got kind of sucked into both sports as well. And then the school systems took over. I played competitive cricket in primary school and high school, and sort of progressed from there. So it was a bit of like national culture, as well as something that was spoken of a lot in the family circle as well. So a combination of both. And yeah, by the time I got to high school, 2 years into high school, I was like well into competitive cricket, and yeah, developed a real passion for it.
And when did you think this is something that you could play at the next level? Like, was there a real hunger from early on to try and pursue the dream of one day representing the West Indies?
I think it was sort of something that I can't remember quite well, sort of when it kicked in, but I know that it became a sort of, it became real when I had to give up soccer at 16. That was when, that was like a big cost for me, because I really loved soccer and I played a lot of it in school. But I had to make a choice at 16, and walking away from soccer was something that sort of crystallized the fact that this is not a joke anymore. It's costing me a lot. And that sort of coincided with getting to an age where you I guess that's probably when I can first start. I'd always dreamed about playing for the West Indies, but that's like, child stuff. You daydream and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
But I think playing at a club with Jeffrey Dujon, who was like a mentor to me, and practicing with him and watching him every day from the age of about 12 or 13, I kind of measured myself against him, and did I achieve what he achieved at a similar level, and yeah, so I use him as a measuring stick all along. But I think when I had to give up football, that was when it became crystal clear that this is not a joke anymore. It's costing me a hell of a lot, and as a result, I want to go as far as I can go in this sport.
Yeah, a big sacrifice to make. I know for a lot of kids in Australia, it's a similar kind of thing. They grow up playing a winter sport and a summer sport, and having to make that decision for which path you're going to go down is a tough one. Do you remember hearing the news that you'd been selected for the West Indies to play against South Africa? What do you remember about the emotions of hearing your name read out in a team like that?
Well, the news came through a phone call. I was actually in Barbados at the time playing an A-team series against England, and the room attendant said that there was a phone call, the telephone that was just outside the dressing room, hanging up on the wall, and it was the chairman of selectors saying that they'd selected me into the squad against South Africa. Yeah, it was. I can't remember. I can't remember that particular period. As in, I can't remember how I felt at the time. I was obviously focusing on a first class game when the call came through. It's I mean, it's a long time ago now when you think about it. But one of the things that I can remember is just the anticipation of getting that maroon cap.
Yeah.
For some reason, I don't know why that sticks in my memory, but I can remember thinking to myself, I'm going to get one of those maroon caps that I've been watching Clive Lloyd, Dave, and Michael Holding, and all of them wear maroon caps, and for some reason that's the only thing that I can remember feeling at the time, is that they're going to give me a maroon cap and I'm going to have a maroon cap. But it was, yeah. Listen, it was, yeah. It was a good feeling. It's something that I'd played 8 years of first class cricket before getting that phone call. So it was a bit of a journey,
and probably an indication of how strong the West Indies were in that period, that 8-year period where you're playing first class cricket. West Indies cricket was really at the peak of their powers.
It was, but it had taken me a long time to learn consistency, if the truth be told. I don't think it was a bad waiting period for having to learn that. And the truth is, it was also, in hindsight, perfect timing, because if I'd hit that kind of form at any point before that, there wouldn't have been a space for me. Because the team was locked down. There were no spaces for anybody in that batting lineup. So it sort of came together at the right time. So yeah, there's no issues with me on the timing. I just wasn't consistent enough. I'd shown glimpses over the previous 8 years that there was something there, but it needed to be put together and presented in a way that removed all doubt. And it took a while for that to happen.
Yeah, and a pretty satisfying debut for you as well. 4 wickets in the game. Hansi Cronje, your first Test match wicket.
That's bad batting. That's bad batting. That's bad batting. It was a long after full touch. Yeah. Listen, I'll take them, but it was bad batting.
And what about facing someone like an Alan Donald? Like, the West Indies were known for their quality fast bowlers. How did Alan Donald stack up against the crop of players you'd been playing in first class cricket? What was that like facing him?
It was a challenge, but again, listen, Alan, great bowler, and I had the pleasure of playing with him at the Free State just after I retired from international cricket. But at the end of the day, I grew up facing some of the best in the world. So that I mean, it was more curiosity, as in, I'd never played against him before, but and there was respect there because we knew how good he was. But yeah, I wasn't losing sleep uh, for any other reason, given the diet of fast bowling and quality fast bowling that I'd grown up on in the Caribbean, in the 10 years previously.
Yeah,
If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And getting some runs in the second innings, did you feel like you belonged?
Yeah, I mean that innings really helped settle me. You're always asking yourself the question when you go into a new environment if this is really where you should be.
Mm.
And I think that innings sort of calmed my nerves a little bit and went a long way to reassuring me that I was at a level that I could handle.
Yeah, yeah. And you mentioned the pace bowling. That was the diet that you kind of grew up on, facing good quality fast bowling. A couple of years into your career, you go to India and you're man of the series in India. And that's a venue, like a part of the world which is known for their quality spin bowlers. What was your method? Like, how do you prepare for a tour like that? And what do you think were the things that made you so successful batting in India?
Well, like a lot of lads in the Caribbean, I grew up on a fair amount of slow bowling in the Caribbean on different types of wickets. So, I mean, spin from both ends wasn't uncommon. I played a lot of spin from school cricket right through. I think the first thing was that there wasn't a fear of it. I think the biggest thing about India was just getting used to the conditions, the crowds, that kind of thing, the style of play that they had, and that, and then just applying basic common sense when you're batting. Get yourself in, be patient. Try and hit the bad balls for 4 or 6 if you get them, or when you get them.
Yep.
And you pretty much constructing your innings the way you do it anywhere else in the world. Maybe using different attacking strokes because you're playing spin. So a lot of sweeping, cutting and late cutting and stuff like that versus maybe pulling and square cutting fast bowlers. You know what I mean? It's the construct didn't change. What helped was I had a if I can remember, I had a good knock in a warm-up game just before the first test. I got a 90-something against India A on a pitch that everybody said was helpful spinners. So yeah. I went into the first test match confident, feeling good about myself. But by then, I was old enough to recognize the fact that I was in a good place and just wanted to make sure that I made it count. The things still weren't that settled by way of batting in the team. We had a young lad called Chanapal who was not in the 11, and of the batting lineup of Lara, Hooper, Atherton, and myself, I was the most junior.
Mm.
So Shiv scored runs in the same warm-up game. So if there was going to be a change, I always figured that I'll be the first person that would be cut. So there was that incentive as well to get in, and then if you got in, really make sure that you made it count so that you wouldn't be the person. Because my first 8 or 9 test matches, I only played because Hooper was injured.
Yeah.
So yeah, so you sort of been in and out. You're scoring runs when you get an opportunity, but then you sit again when the big guns come back. So it was that that upward pressure was for me, it was a good thing. So a combination of that and a decent score in that warm up game. I remember going into the first test feeling pretty good about myself. So I think a combination of those things helped.
Yeah, for sure. And what's it like being around that batting group? Like Carl Hooper, one of the most pleasing on the eye batters you'll ever see. Brian Lara, household name. What are you learning from playing with those guys?
Well, I think the best thing for me was that you knew, especially with sort of my history in the first few test matches of just coming in as a replacement for whoever was injured or not there, was that you had to make every innings count.
Mm.
And then you just, I mean, we're all, well, certainly myself and Hoop and Bran, we were pretty good friends, but we sort of knew the score, we were at the highest level. It's all about performance. The person that I really learned a lot from just watching and listening was Desmond Hill, who was like the senior. So himself and Richie were like the two senior batsmen. But I really enjoyed watching Desmond practice, and I used to try and make sure that I could watch him bat in the net. Even though he was a right-hander, just how he went about things, and yeah, I learned a hell of a lot just watching Desmond for 2 years. And how he went about putting his innings together, and he was very open about talking about his game, and I used to enjoy listening to how he looked at things and how he viewed things and how he approached his batting. But with like Brian and Shiv and Carl, we sort of all got on really well together, supported each other, but at the same time we knew that this wasn't a joke. This was it. There's nowhere to hide. We're here to perform, and so I think all of us had that mindset. If we get an opportunity, we're going to try and make it count in a big way.
Yeah, for sure. And making it count again a couple of years later to the New Zealand come and play, and you have success with both bat and ball. You mentioned your first test wicket was bad batting. 5 for 17 against New Zealand. That can't have all been bad batting.
But if you saw me bowl, you would not be making a statement like that. Yeah. Like I said, I'll say it again. It looks good on the CV. I'll take it.
Yeah.
But what's the best way to put it? Let me switch that around. There is no day, no way ever that I could ever get me out with what I bowl.
Yes.
Unequivocally, right? So, listen, I don't want to talk about opposition batting and all the rest of it, because people might think that I'm trying to make other people look bad. But I'll just suffice to say, I'll take it. I'm happy in the CV, but me, like, the person who was most surprised on that day was me.
Yeah.
Let's just leave it at that.
Yeah, no, that sounds fair enough. And a double 100 in Test cricket, 208 not out in that series, to craft an innings like that and to reach that milestone. How much confidence does that give you in your ability to produce at that level?
Yeah, listen, I enjoyed it. It's something that I'll always feel proud about. The fact that you hit a double 100 in Test cricket. It sort of, I guess, in a way, validates, or in my mind, helps to validate me as a batter. Conditions were very good for batting. It was a drawn game. I think 500, they had 500, and there were quite a few centuries in the game. So again, it's more a case of getting in and just making sure that your start counts, and the rate at which the runs were coming, you sort of figured, hey, listen, maybe I might be able to go beyond 100 here, and it worked itself out that way. And for the amount of runs, it's special. It's a special memory. There were many more difficult test innings, some of which weren't even 100, that I, from a batting perspective, I would put more value on. But yeah, just to, it's a landmark. It's a double 100 in Test cricket, and I'm proud of it, and I enjoyed it. And yeah, it was a good feeling on the day. And yeah, it's there, and it was fun. But I will say that I've been in situations where I didn't even get to 100, but I would put more value on that innings and the 200 for levels of difficulty and the sort of challenges that you had to overcome, if that makes sense.
Yeah, did you want to skip to possibly one of those? Now, the 1 wicket win against Pakistan, where you bat for 5.5 hours for 48 not out. You have a partnership with Courtney Walsh that lasts 72 minutes. And interestingly in this, so you pass the total 9 for 197 to get across the line in what was an unwinnable situation, it seemed at times, where when the wickets were falling, Wasim Akram was bowling out of his skin. Just a couple of things on that, the concentration involved there, but also managing to keep Courtney Walsh away from the strike. He only had to face 24 balls in 72 minutes. What are your reflections on that? Just watching the highlights of it, you certainly looked overjoyed at the end of the game, but can you talk us through pulling something like that off?
Boy, it's a combination of so many things. I think firstly, there was the pressure was on before that point. When Courtney came, for me, I just personally, there's no pressure per se, because it became, or it was very clear to me at the time that, listen, the numbers are stacked in Pakistan's favor. We made a very simple plan, which was Courtney couldn't face Wasim.
Yep.
Courtney was comfortable. He said he was more comfortable. He couldn't face Wasim. So whoever else was bowling at the other end, it turned out he had to face a lot of Sakleen and I think a little bit of Razak and Wakar.
Mm-hmm.
I think. And he said he was comfortable doing that. So that, in a nutshell, was the plan. Courtney, I'll take all of Wasim, and you do the best you can at the other end. And I told him, I said, listen, I can't remember how many runs we had when he came into bat, but I said, listen, Courtney's going to take a while because we're going to refuse runs. Because I can't leave this end.
Mm.
And therefore, and Wasim isn't bowling any freebies. So I might have to soak up balls, and think, you're at the other end, whatever you get, we'll take. But it has to work out that I'm facing Wasim coming to the start of his overs. And he said, fine. And what can I say? It's just, that was just the plan. And when I said there was no pressure on, I remember being a state of mind at the time where, listen, either it works or it doesn't work. It's like there's no sense, and because you're in the moment and you're actually playing, it must have been hell for the lads watching.
Yeah.
But for us out there who are actually, for us who are out there doing it, it's the plan sort of just takes over, and it's sort of ball by ball. I remember the crowd being very unhappy in the early stages of the partnership when we refused runs, and because they didn't quite understand what the plan was and so on. But the sort of closer we inched to it, they sort of started to get it, and by the time we needed like 10 runs, that they were like finally fully on board. And then we had loads of luck as well. There were 2 instances where Courtney and myself were in the same crease, and Pakistan somehow managed to throw the ball away. Like Sakleen didn't collect the ball on the half volley. It was a poor throw to him, and I scrambled back. And then another instance where we're in the same crease again, and Courtney managed to scramble back. And then Wasim nicked me off, and the umpire said not out. I wasn't walking. and then Sakleen nicked off Courtney on his inside edge, and the umpire said not out again. And so it's like a combination of quite a few things. So but it was drama. It was, what can I say? It's Test cricket, man. You know what it's like. it can get close on that 50th. But it meant a lot to us as a team. Certainly for me, I grew up watching. I always thought that Pakistan were the best team in the world from sort of the late 80s through to the sort of mid 90s when you had Wasim Wakar, Mushi, Said Anwar, Inzi, Salim Malik. To me, they're always like the most talented team going. Sometimes they don't put it together because they can't quite play it together, but talent-wise, just like proper cricketers.
Yeah.
So to come away with a series win with a young West Indies team, was meant a lot to me, and that innings meant a lot. And it was only 48 runs, but in the context of where we were, I really enjoyed it. It's hard work, and you had your fair share of luck, but that's life for you, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And the rivalry between the West Indies and Australia, the Frank Worrell Trophy, hotly contested for a long period there, and one of the great series, and we do have a lot of Australian listeners that would be very interested to hear your reflections on this. That the 1999 Australian tour of the West Indies started out with a fairly dominant win for the Australians, and then
in Trinidad,
and then Brian Lara just owns it for a couple of test matches there. Another nail biter, actually. I think it was the third test at Bridgetown. Brian gets 150 not out, and you guys win by 1 wicket, and then the series gets locked up 2-2 after the St John's test, and then the ODI series is 3-3 as well, with a tie, a 7-game series, 3 wins each and a tie. So, what was the thinking like in the West Indies camp at the time? What did it mean to you guys to put the Australians under so much pressure, and that Australian team at the time were probably at the top of their game?
Well, there's so many undercurrents to that series. I don't think we have enough time to examine all of them. But I will say, just to give a bit of context to Brian's performance, that the team had come back from South Africa having been whitewashed in 5 test matches. And none of the batsmen had really done much of anything. And then we got beaten badly in the first test in Trinidad. And pretty much the selectors, maybe if we'd lost the second test in Jamaica, they would have removed Brian as captain. Brian and I had a sort of heart-to-heart in Jamaica before the test match began, because I had some questions about the team that was selected, and trying to get some background on what the selectors were thinking.
Yeah.
Just as a friend, like, Brian, what's the thinking behind what we're doing here,
Yeah.
And he basically said, listen, mate, I went into the selection meeting and they gave me this 11 and said, this is your team. He said it was the shortest selection meeting he'd ever been in. Like, they gave him the team and that's it. You yourself are on trial as captain, kind of thing.
Wow.
And I think like all, well, I shouldn't say all because I don't know, but you hear so many stories of truly great performers and performances that have come on the back of what would seem at the time like a situation where you're standing on a cliff edge. And the pressure he was under, to me, it sort of adds to his performance in that series. Everybody raves about the innings in Barbados, but Brian puts more emphasis on the double hundred in Jamaica because of what had happened leading into the test match. and he needed a response then and there. And uh, mere mortals can't, in a sense, determine an outcome like that, whereas the great players can. You put them behind the 8 ball and they just say, okay, fine, I'll show you. And they conjure up something, usually something great. So from that point of view, it's probably one of the best pieces of batting across a series that I've seen because of, and I'm not taking away from other great performances by other great players who might have been under similar pressure, you know, but I can only speak about a performance that I know of and saw and was a part of. So the runs that he scored, I mean, a lot of his run scoring feats have come on the back of something that he needs to prove right away. You know, he goes to Sri Lanka and for the first time his batting average is below 50 and everybody's writing about his batting average dipping below and he gets 700 runs in 3 test matches against Malaysia. Stuff like that. You know, it's kind of strange like that. And yeah, his batting in that series was probably the best answer that he could have given.
Yeah.
A group that in his mind had lost faith in him and were getting ready to remove him from the captaincy of the team. So in that way, it was great batting on his part. Listen, Australia were the number 1 team in the world. We'd just come back from South Africa, having gotten our asses kicked there in a big way. So to be leaving Barbados, leading Australia 2-1, going into Antigua, I mean, it was just a situation that we couldn't have envisioned going into the series. And everybody played the part. Brian obviously scored runs. Walsh and Ambrose were unbelievable throughout that series.
Yeah.
I think Courtney Walsh was the highest wicket taker in the series. Nobody remembers that, but he just kept trundling in and just kept getting wickets. And people talk about Brian's 100 in Barbados, but there was a bowling performance by, I think, Courtney Walsh to get Australia out in the second innings to give us time just to have a dart at the runs. And yeah, it was just a really hard fought series. I think, not taking anything away from anybody's performance, but I do think that if Australia had a fit Shane Warne, the job might have been a little bit more difficult for us.
Yeah.
Shane was coming back from a shoulder injury, and to be fair to him, I don't think he was bowling as well as we had seen him before or he bowled after. But it's just at that time, his shoulder wasn't right. And he wasn't the same force as he had been previously. And I think they dropped him for the last test in Antigua as well. So, you know, there are a lot of things happening for both teams, but it was a proper series. You know, it just went back and forth. And, you know, I think most players came out of that series, you know, creditably. You know, everybody sort of popped up at some point.
Yeah.
And, Brian sort of walked away as a sort of top performer overall. But, yeah, on both sides, there were some really good performances made. And it sort of really, I think it was a good sell for Test cricket in general, to be honest.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's on the list of series. Like most Australians my age, we look back at that as when Test cricket was really not that it's not anymore, but the certainly that series is one that we remember very fondly for all the right reasons. And you get to captain in the ODI series. Brian's out. He's a late withdrawal from one of the games, and it ends up being 30 overs aside, and it's a tie. What can you explain the pandemonium at the end of that game for those listeners who may not be aware of what we're talking about?
Yeah, so let me see if I can quickly put in the words. So it's the old stadium in Guyana, so the people are standing around the boundary, believe it or not, in 1999. And so there's a huge section of the watching public that can literally just step onto the field. And they basically got the numbers wrong, as in the spectators got the numbers wrong with all that was happening in that last over. I think Keith Austin was bowling it.
Yeah.
And Australia needed something like 3 runs to win, I think, or something like that. And when the ball was hit out to whoever was at long on or something, and I guess in the crowd's mind, they know that Australia won't get the runs to win, but they don't allow the game to finish. They literally, as soon as the ball is hit and it's not hit very hard, it's not obviously not a boundary and it's fielded by, I can't remember who did the field, maybe it's joke with them or somebody. So they invade the field because they're just overjoyed in their minds, but technically they haven't allowed the game to finish. And the match referee decided that, listen, we can't award the West Indies this game because this infraction happened before the game actually finished. And therefore, the referee, I think, I can't remember who the match referee was. It might have been Jarman, gentleman called Jarman, South African. But yeah, so it's a bit disappointing. I mean, selfishly, I kind of felt a little bit aggrieved, given that it was the first time I was being asked to captain the team, and I thought, here it is. I could have walked away with a 1-day win as a captain in my first year. But but yeah, it was certainly for me. It was a sign that we needed to tighten up a few things in cricket in the Caribbean. We can't have people in 1999 stopping a game like that, and
yeah.
Yeah, that definitely wasn't a good advert for West Indies cricket. I know there are many other grounds across the world where people had invaded the field when a game was over, and that was a common sight in many places. But in those places, they allowed the game to finish. The game was over, and then everybody tries to grab a cap or a stump or something before, or some piece of memorabilia. But yeah, it was. By 1999, you're thinking, surely, we can't be going through stuff like that. This day and age where you lose a result, you fail to get a result because of lack of security, or just match day preparations aren't world class, aren't what they should be. So in one sense, it looked a bit strange. I was very disappointed at the end, and even to this day, I'm not in terms of the whole captaincy thing. It just kind of looked bad. I just thought, if this had happened in the 80s or 70s, you'd have thought, okay, fine, sign of the times kind of thing. But I remember thinking, this is 1999. We're going to a World Cup in a month's time in England. Would this ever happen in? You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
Like let's move on from this very quickly because it shouldn't happen.
Yeah, yeah. And captaincy in general. What was your? Did you like being the captain? Did you find it a burden? What were some of the things that you look back on in your time as captain of the West Indies?
I think I went through the whole sort of kaleidoscope of emotions when in the year that I did it. Extremely proud to be asked to do it, and yeah, I enjoyed the decision making aspect of it. The tactical side, the managing of players. We had a young team, and I enjoyed working with your Chris Gales, your Wavell Hines, your Sarwans, Ryan King. We had a bunch of young lads that were finding their feet at international level, and I really enjoyed that dynamic, the relationship with these lads. When it ended, I was a little bit jaded because I was starting to see an underbelly of West Indies cricket that I didn't share the same values with, and I think the ending was actual perfect timing because the environment was something that by then I didn't have any control of, and I wasn't seeing things the same way as team management.
Yep.
And when I went back home, no, even before I went to Australia, I realized I wasn't seeing things the same way as the power brokers in the game back home. And I was too young at the time to understand what it meant in the sort of short, medium, long term. But after retirement and you sort of grow and you mature a little bit more and you reflect on the time, you think back and you sort of realize that there was always going to come a time when the not just leadership, although leadership is one aspect of it, but we didn't have that much in common by way of values, and that tension just sort of kept, you didn't notice it at first, and then it sort of just kept building throughout the year. And yeah, I'm glad I went through it because it's taught me a hell of a lot about organizations, leadership, that kind of thing. But it was not to take away just the immense pride of being asked to captain your country, which you know is the overriding memory for me.
Yeah.
And then I would also say that a tremendous amount of learning in that period, man management, leadership, governance, the whole work. Some of which you learned years after because you didn't have a framework for what you were going through. And then as you got old and you developed these frameworks, you said, okay, this is what it meant. You know what I mean? You start to give some of these experiences more context. So it was a fantastic 12 months. I really enjoyed it. And, you know, challenging, but in a good way. And yeah, just the opportunity to lead a really fine bunch of lads who, you know, I still to this day think they're a great bunch of lads, everybody in their own way. And the learning that I got from it was invaluable as well. You know, the tremendous life lessons out of that one sort of year of leadership.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Positive experience and yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, sets you up for life after cricket. And how has life after playing cricket been for Jimmy Adams? How do you see yourself spending the next part of your life? Oh man,
I've already started to spend it, man. I've been retired 20-something years. It's flown by so quickly. It's been all fun, man. To be honest, I spent a few years, you know, doing a lot of media work and coaching.
Yep.
And then and I sort of wound down my playing career gradually. So I stopped playing Test cricket in 2001, but I played first class cricket for a few more years in South Africa. And then when I stopped that, I still played a bit of professional cricket in England. So I didn't stop playing professionally until 2006, but I'd already started doing loads of media work. And I've always coached. I've always, you know, a lot of it at the time was private stuff and through academies that I knew in various places.
Yep.
And then I took up a role in Jamaica as technical director in my home country, and I did that for a few years before then taking up a role as a head coach at Kent in England, which I did for 5 years, and I've just finished a 6.5-year stint as director of cricket with the CWI. So it's been a mixed bag between coaching, media work, and sort of a technical director's role at both first class and international level, and it's been fun. I mean, I've enjoyed all the roles in different ways and for different reasons. And it's always been sort of fresh and exciting and, always something new happening. But I think more than anything else is I'm very grateful to have been allowed to stay in the game.
Mm.
It's a game that I love, and yeah, I think in a very simplistic sense, just to wake up on a morning doing something that you enjoy, something that not many people in the world have, and my way of looking at it is I've never really had a bad day in the office. As a player, as a coach, as an administrator, I've had disappointing days and I've had frustrating days, but I've never had a bad day. I've never had a day where you said, Jimmy, you've just gotten a pair at the MCG. Where else would you rather be in the world earning a living? And I'd say without thinking, nowhere else.
Yeah. Nowhere else.
It's a frustrating day, yes, in the office, but I've never had a bad day. And I think, you look back on, as you get older, you're looking back on more and more working years behind you. And just, you look at other people who are doing jobs because they have to. And maybe don't have a real passion for what they're doing, but they're doing the right thing. They're working, they're earning a living. And I just think to earn a living doing something that you like and you enjoy, and you enjoy the people around you for the most part, is a gift. And I'm thankful for that. And it's been a mixed bag since I retired, but in a good sense. I've enjoyed it. There hasn't been a period where I've been involved in an aspect of the game and haven't really enjoyed it. While I was doing media, I got opportunities to coach, and I really enjoyed doing it. So when I got a chance to do full-time cricket development, high performance work, I took it, and no regrets. I enjoyed media, but yeah, the high performance stuff really I found really enjoyable.
Yeah.
It's been 20 years of fun since retirement, 23 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no regret.
Yeah, a great perspective and a great attitude towards life in general. To count your blessings and be really thankful for what you have and the opportunities that you have each day. We run out of time, but to wrap things up, we'd love to know if you could have a dream cricket net session, who are the three people that you would most like to hang out with at the cricket nets?
Well, having had a chance as a kid to net with, because when the West Indies would come into town, they would ask young kids to come and net with them, and then you end up at the test match carrying drinks and so on. So I managed to experience that with my idols at the time, who were Viv and Michael Holding.
Wow.
So that was, I thought I lived that dream as a 16, 17-year-old. However, so taking them out, I would love to have a net with Don Bradman, George Headley, and Sir Richard Hadley.
Oh, yes. What a great mix.
Well, I would be in charge of the net, and it would be seeing one of the greatest fast bowlers that I've ever seen bowling to two of the reputedly best batsmen who I never did see.
Yeah.
It would solve one of the conundrums that I've wondered all these years about, how good people were across different eras,
Yeah.
So that would be my ideal net, taking one of the best fast bowlers of a modern generation and sticking him up against two of the greatest batsmen from that era. And, right, let's see which era was the best, if there were,
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be my dream net.
That's brilliant, Jimmy. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us on the Cricket Library podcast today. It's been a real thrill for me to hear your story, and I know our listeners will really get a lot out of what you've had to say. So thanks so much for joining us.
No worries, man. You take care and all the best, man.
A massive thanks to Jimmy Adams for joining us on this edition of the Cricket Library podcast. Wonderful to hear his story today, and wonderful to have you, our loyal listeners, tuning in and able to share in it as well. Massive thanks to all of you who tune in to each and every episode. And if you're brand new to the show, make sure you check in with our back catalogue. Plenty of other great stories on the back catalogue for you to enjoy at your leisure. And this one is just one of many great stories that will hopefully inspire you to love the game even more. If you'd like to keep up with the latest from the Cricket Library podcast, head over to thecricketlibrary.com. But until next time, this has been Matt Ellis for the Cricket Library podcast. Bye for now.